The night had settled over the island with a softness that didn't match the way Emma's chest felt. She stood alone on the balcony of the rented beach house, staring at the outline of a single sandal someone had forgotten by the railing, hers. The other one was somewhere inside, lost in the Mes Cos Cuatro Dias de Ferias Tinham Virado. But that one sandal, tilted slightly, wet with mist from the incoming breeze, felt like a symbol she wasn't ready to name, half of something, waiting for its pair. No matter how she tried to shake it off, the thought stayed there, warm and restless, the way the humid Hawaiian air clung to her skin. And maybe that was her problem, she felt too much, too rapido, sempre antes das outras pessoas perceberam que algo estava acontecendo. Inside, the girls were laughing. Voices misturadas with the soft bass humming from a speaker, the lights dimmed to a warm, honey-colored glow that made everything look more intimate than intended. Emma wiped her palms on her shorts, feeling the salt of the air mixing with the faint coconut vanilla lotion she had usado mais cedo. The contrast of scents, warm skin and ocean breeze, made her strangely aware of her own heartbeat. Natalie aparisu antes que Emma pudesse recompor o rosto. She crossed the living room barefoot, carrying 2 slices of pineapple on a small plate, her wet hair dripping over a thin white tank top that revealed more silhouette than fabric. 22, sun-kissed skin, eyes the color of light amber when the sun hit right. There was something both calm and electric about her, like she held storms secretly under her ribs. She smiled when she saw Emma, a small curve of lips that felt confidential somehow. "You hiding out here?" she asked, leaning on the doorframe. The sound of her voice, soft, low, warm, mixed with the gentle percussion of waves hitting the rocks below. Emma swallowed, hoping it wasn't audible. "Just getting some air. It's hot inside. It's Hawaii. It's supposed to be hot." Emma let a smile slip, and Natalie's gaze lingered long enough for Emma to feel it brush her skin like fingertips. She looked away too quickly, pretending to focus on the movement of the palm leaves swaying under the porch light. But the truth was, she felt Natalie noticing her. And she didn't know what to do with that feeling yet. A few steps inside, Evelyn and Grace were arguing about which movie to put on for background noise, not that anyone ever paid attention to the movie during these nights. Evelyn, always vibrante e impulsiva, had flushed cheeks from the tropical drinks, her dark hair pulled into a high ponytail that bounced when she moved. Grace was her opposite in almost everything: quiet posture, soft expressions, blonde hair falling over her shoulders in delicate waves. 23, with a way of tilting her head that made her seem constantly curious, though she rarely said what she was thinking. Emma noticed how Evelyn's hand brushed Grace's elbow when she leaned over to grab the remote. It was careless. Or maybe not. Grace looked down at the point of contact as if filing the feeling away for later. The room smelled like rum, sunscreen and something floral, probably Grace's perfume, and for a second the mixture felt dizzying. Natalie stepped closer to Emma, not enough to touch, but enough for Emma to feel the subtle shift of temperature between them. "You're quieter than usual tonight," Natalie murmured. "Just tired," Emma lied, sensing the warmth of Natalie's body even through the humid air. "Or overthinking," Natalie said, her voice teasing but gentle. Emma's breath caught. She didn't know how Natalie always read her that easily. It felt unfair. It felt intimate. It felt like something she shouldn't want but already did. From the couch, Evelyn called. "Girls. Movie time. Or at least pretend to watch time. Come on." Natalie laughed softly, almost musical, and Emma felt the sound settle under her skin. "We should join them," Natalie whispered. Emma nodded, but neither moved. The air between them thickened with the scent of rain beginning outside, that earthy, warm smell of tropical drizzle, and something unspoken that hovered, curious and waiting. When they finally stepped inside, Emma sat on the far end of the couch, trying to put some distance between herself and whatever was happening inside her. Natalie chose a seat on the floor, leaning against the couch, right next to Emma's knees. Close enough that Emma felt the heat radiating from her shoulders. Close enough that her fingers tingled with the urge to touch something, skin, fabric, anything, just to see what would happen. A scene from the movie flickered on the TV, light bouncing off Natalie's cheekbone. Emma found herself watching the reflection instead of the screen. Natalie turned her head slightly, sensing it, and their eyes met. Not long. Not obvious. But enough for Emma to forget how to breathe right. The others kept talking, Evelyn complaining about her drink being too weak, Grace laughing softly at something no one heard, but Emma's world had narrowed to a warmth building silently in her chest. Natalie tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. A simple gesture. But Emma noticed the way the movement exposed the line of her neck, the soft rise and fall of her breathing. She wondered if Natalie could hear her thoughts in the quiet space between them. "You okay?" Natalie whispered, not looking at her this time. Emma wanted to say yes. She wanted to say no. She wanted to say something that made sense of the way the room felt tilted, as if everything important had slowly shifted toward this exact moment. "I'm fine," she finally said, barely audible. Natalie's hand lifted slightly, as if she meant to place it on Emma's knee, but she stopped halfway and let it fall softly on her own thigh. Emma felt the ghost of that almost touch like a spark against her skin. A gust of wind pushed the balcony door open an inch, letting in the cool scent of incoming rain. Grace got up to close it, her eyes drifting across the room for a second, first to Evelyn, and then, unexpectedly, to Natalie and Emma. She hesitated, subtle and quick, before turning away. That hesitation left something suspended in the air, something Emma couldn't quite name, but could feel deep enough to unsettle her. Natalie shifted, turning her face slightly toward Emma again. "You sure you're fine?" she asked. Emma opened her mouth, but a knock on the door startled everyone. A neighbor warning them about the weather, about the possibility of strong rain overnight. But for Emma, the interruption felt like something else, like the universe stepping between her and a moment she hadn't been brave enough to reach for. And when she looked back at Natalie, the girl was watching her with a softness that made her chest tighten and her thoughts scatter. One more second, Emma thought. Just one. Another heartbeat, another breath, another shift of air, and maybe something would have happened. But Natalie looked away first, pushing herself up to grab another drink. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Something had begun. Something none of them were ready to say out loud. The morning after the storm felt unreal, as if the island itself had woken slower than usual. Soft clouds filtered the sunlight into something milky and delicate, and the house smelled like brewed coffee, sunscreen, and the faint sweetness of fruit left out overnight. Emma came down the hallway barefoot, rubbing sleep from her eyes, expecting to find everyone still asleep. Instead, she found Natalie alone in the kitchen, hair in a loose braid, humming a melody that sounded both familiar and entirely her own. Natalie stood in front of the open fridge, the cool white light illuminating her tan shoulders. She wore an oversized t-shirt that slipped off one side, exposing a smooth line of skin that made Emma pause in the doorway. She didn't mean to stare, but the room felt suspended between the chill of the fridge and the warmth of the tropical morning. "Morning," Natalie said without turning. Her voice was soft, almost raspy from sleep. Emma stepped farther into the room. "You're up early." "Jet lag," Natalie replied, closing the fridge with her hip. "And Grace snores like she's fighting a personal battle with the universe." Emma laughed, a real laugh, light and unguarded. "She does." "Oh, you have no idea." Evelyn tried to record it once, but Grace threw a pillow at her. "It's a miracle we all survived freshman year." Natalie placed 2 glasses on the counter and poured a mix of pineapple and coconut juice. The smell was sweet and bright, mixing with the ocean breeze drifting through the open window. She offered 1 glass to Emma, their fingers brushing for half a second, warm against warm, and neither of them pulled away too quickly. They drank quietly for a moment, leaning on opposite sides of the counter, their shoulders angled slightly toward each other even though there was plenty of space to stand apart. Outside, birds called from the palm trees, and a distant rumble hinted at more rain later. "I thought everyone would be asleep for hours," Emma said. "Evelyn is," Natalie replied, smiling as she tapped her glass. Grace disappeared for a run. "She's the responsible one among us. And you?" "I'm adaptable, I guess. I go where the day takes me." Emma pressed her thumb against the condensation on her glass, watching it streak slowly. "And where's the day taking you today?" Natalie hesitated, only for a breath. "Depends. Where are you going?" Before Emma could answer, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Evelyn, dramatic as ever, wrapped in a blanket like a disgruntled queen. She groaned loudly at the brightness. "Why is it morning? Who allowed this?" Natalie rolled her eyes lovingly. "Coffee's ready." "I don't want coffee. I want silence. And sunglasses. And maybe a new body. Mine hurts." Grace arrived a moment later, cheeks flushed from exercise, smelling like citrus shampoo and a hint of sweat warmed by the sun. Evelyn perked up instantly, as if gravity had shifted. "You're glowing," Evelyn said. "I'm sweating," Grace corrected, but her smile betrayed the way her heart reacted to Evelyn's attention. As the four of them gathered around the mismatched table for a late breakfast, the energy felt different, looser, familiar in a new way. Emma caught Natalie stealing glances at her, not shyly, but with a curiosity that warmed Emma's spine. Every time their eyes met, something unspoken stretched between them, tangible like a ribbon. After breakfast, they decided to explore a nearby beach trail. The air smelled of plumeria and wet earth from the night storm. The path was narrow, forcing the pairs to walk close. Natalie stayed beside Emma, their arms brushing occasionally as they navigated roots and uneven ground. "Careful here," Natalie said, placing a steadying hand on Emma's back as they crossed a slippery log. The touch was brief, but the imprint of her warm palm lingered longer than it should. "Thanks," Emma murmured. "Anytime." They reached a hidden overlook with a stunning view of turquoise waves breaking against black volcanic rock. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of sea salt and the distant sweetness of hibiscus. Evelyn and Grace wandered ahead, caught up in their own quiet orbit, leaving Emma and Natalie alone under the shade of a sprawling tree. Natalie leaned against the trunk and exhaled deeply. "I could stay here forever." Emma sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. "You think you will stay somewhere like this?" Natalie shrugged. "I always thought I'd move around a lot. My parents did. They're already planning another relocation." She paused, running her fingers over a leaf. "It's kind of exhausting. Never really belonging anywhere." Emma studied her profile, the curve of her jaw, the way a strand of hair caught the sunlight. "Maybe belonging isn't about a place." Natalie turned to her, one corner of her mouth lifting. "Yeah. What is it about?" Emma swallowed. "I think it's about who you're with." Something flickered in Natalie's eyes. A softness. A question. Before she could respond, a sharp whistle from Evelyn broke the moment. "Guys! Come look at this tide pool. I think I found a tiny crab with anger issues." Natalie laughed, but the moment didn't vanish. It simply tucked itself away, waiting. Later that afternoon, after they returned to the house, the power flickered due to approaching rain. A soft dimness settled inside, the warm kind that makes voices sound closer. Grace and Evelyn took over the kitchen to cook something improvised, fighting over spices while laughing with the ease of people discovering a new language between them. Natalie and Emma ended up folding beach towels together in the living room, a simple task, but every movement felt charged. Their hands brushed repeatedly, each accidental, each more deliberate than the last. At one point Emma dropped a towel, and both of them bent to pick it up. Their faces stopped inches apart. Emma could feel the warmth of Natalie's breath, could see the tiny droplets of sea spray still caught in the girl's lashes from their walk. A beat passed. Another. Natalie whispered, "Emma." But the house lights surged back on with a loud click, startling them apart. The spell broke, but the air didn't clear. It stayed thick with promise. Dinner was a blur of jokes, clattering plates, and the smell of garlic and lime. Evelyn kept brushing against Grace, by accident, and Grace kept blushing, though she tried to act unaffected. Emma watched them, wondering if anyone else noticed how much gravity existed between certain people. When night fell again, the sky glowed with distant lightning. The girls moved to the porch with blankets, watching the ocean shimmer silver in the storm's reflection. Natalie sat beside Emma, sharing the same blanket without mentioning it. Their shoulders touched. Their knees brushed. Their breaths synced. "Hey," Natalie whispered, so low only Emma could hear. "Tomorrow, let's do something. Just us." Emma's pulse quickened. "Like what?" Natalie smiled, eyes drifting to Emma's lips for a second far too long. "I'll tell you in the morning." A drop of rain landed between them, cold against Emma's thigh. They didn't move. They stayed close until Evelyn announced she was cold and Grace insisted they go inside. As they gathered their things, Emma turned back once more. Natalie was already looking at her, like she had been waiting for the moment their eyes met again. And Emma realized, tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The morning arrived warm and bright, as if the island had decided to apologize for the previous night's storm. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, painting soft gold on the wooden floorboards. Emma woke feeling both restless and hopeful, her pulse already anticipating the promise Natalie had left hanging between them. Downstairs, she found Natalie tying her hair into a loose bun while scanning a small map spread across the table. The smell of fresh mango and the crisp scent of ocean breeze drifted through the open windows. "Good morning," Natalie said, looking up with a smile that softened everything inside Emma. "Morning. You're up early, again." "Couldn't sleep." Natalie tapped the corner of the map. "I want to take you somewhere before the others wake up." Emma's eyebrows lifted. "Just me?" Natalie didn't answer immediately. She folded the map and tucked it into her pocket before stepping closer, her voice dropping into something warm and careful. "If you want to." Emma nodded. "I do." They left quietly, packing nothing but a water bottle and slipping into sandals. The air was cool from the night rain, smelling of wet earth and plumeria. As they walked through the winding path behind the house, the morning sunlight washed over them in soft stripes. Natalie led the way, occasionally looking back to make sure Emma was still behind her. At one point, she reached out instinctively to steady Emma over a slippery patch of mud. Her fingers wrapped around Emma's wrist, warm, light, hesitant. Emma felt the touch like a pulse. "Sorry," Natalie murmured, pulling back gently. "Don't be," Emma answered, too quickly. They made their way to a hidden cove tucked between volcanic rock formations. The ocean there was calm, the waves brushing the shore in slow breaths. Tiny crabs scurried along tide pools, and sunlight glittered on the water like scattered glass. "I found this place last summer," Natalie told her softly. "I come here when I need to think." Emma listened to the quiet sincerity in her voice. "It's beautiful." "Yeah," Natalie said, but she wasn't looking at the ocean. She was looking at Emma. They walked along the waterline until Natalie crouched near a tide pool, pointing at a starfish resting against the sand. Emma knelt beside her, their shoulders brushing. The warmth of Natalie's skin seeped through Emma's shirt, tightening something low in her stomach. "Careful," Natalie whispered. "They're delicate." Emma noticed the way Natalie's breath moved a strand of hair near her own cheek. The closeness felt intentional, even though neither of them said it aloud. When they stood, a sudden drizzle caught them by surprise. Soft at first, like a whisper, then stronger. Natalie laughed, tilting her face to the sky. We should go back before it gets worse. But the path back up the hill had turned slick from the rain, the clay mud clinging to their sandals. Emma slipped once, catching herself on a rock, and Natalie grabbed her elbow. Wait, Natalie urged. Let me help. They leaned into each other, balancing through the slippery incline. Natalie's hand slid from Emma's elbow to her waist, not rushed, not hesitant, just natural, as if the moment had chosen for them. By the time they reached a flat stretch of path, the rain had thickened into warm droplets, soaking their shirts and making Emma's hair cling to her cheeks. They stopped under a large tree with broad leaves that shielded them partially. Their breathing was uneven. Their clothes damp. Their eyes locked in a silence that said more than either dared to speak. Natalie stepped closer, water dripping from her lashes. Emma, earlier, last night. Emma swallowed, her pulse skittering. Me too. Natalie let out a shaky exhale, her hand lifting slowly, as if asking permission without words, brushing a wet strand of hair behind Emma's ear. Her fingers lingered near Emma's jaw, barely touching, the warmth of her skin radiating through the cool mist of rain. Emma leaned subtly into the touch. That was all the answer Natalie needed. She closed the distance gently, her lips brushing Emma's in the softest movement, brief, trembling, filled with something that felt like discovery. It wasn't a deep kiss. It wasn't urgent. It was a question. A beginning. A quiet spark shared between two people afraid to inhale too deeply and break the moment. When Natalie pulled back, she didn't go far. Their foreheads nearly touched. I've wanted to do that since the first night, she confessed in a whisper barely audible over the rain. Emma's throat tightened. Me too. They stood there, suspended in the calm of the tree's shelter, the sound of rain creating a soft rhythm around them. But the afterglow of the kiss quickly tangled with uncertainty, like warm air meeting a sudden breeze. Natalie stepped back first. It was small, barely a movement, but Emma felt it as if someone had closed a door between them. Natalie raked a hand through her damp hair. We should get back. Okay, Emma said, even though nothing felt okay. They walked in silence, the earlier warmth replaced by an invisible line neither dared to cross. Their shoulders no longer brushed. Their hands stayed carefully at their sides. When they reached the house, the sun was breaking through the clouds again, bright and indifferent. Laughter spilled from the open windows, Evelyn teasing Grace about something, pans clattering, music playing lightly. Natalie paused at the steps, her expression unreadable. Let's just not say anything yet. Not until we figure out whatever this is. Emma nodded because she didn't know what else to do. Sure. Tomorrow we can talk, maybe. Natalie let out a slow breath, her gaze flicking briefly to Emma's lips before she turned toward the door. Tomorrow. But Emma felt it, the distance settling between them like a shadow. Something had begun. And now, something else was holding them apart. The rain returned that night, soft at first, then steadier, tapping the windows like a reminder neither of them wanted. Emma sat curled on the couch, a blanket around her legs, pretending to watch the movie Evelyn had insisted on playing. But her mind kept replaying the moment under the tree, the warmth of Natalie's lips, the way her breath trembled afterward, and the sudden distance that followed like a shutter closing. Natalie had barely spoken to her since they returned from the cove. Not coldly, just carefully. Too carefully. Every smile was shorter, every glance redirected, every word weighed before spoken. It was the kind of tension that felt like walking on a floor that might crack. Evelyn nudged Emma's foot. You okay? You look like someone unplugged your soul. Emma forced a laugh. Just tired. But Evelyn didn't buy it. She narrowed her eyes with the intuition of a best friend who had seen Emma's heart spill in slow motion more than once. "If you want to talk." "I'm fine, Ev," Emma cut in gently. Evelyn hesitated, then let it go, turning back to the screen, though she shot a quick glance toward Natalie across the room, as if connecting dots Emma wished she wouldn't. Grace emerged from the kitchen with plates of fruit, her blonde hair tied in a messy knot, smelling faintly of citrus and mint. She set the plates down, brushing Evelyn's shoulder in a way that made Evelyn freeze for a heartbeat before pretending nothing had happened. The whole house felt charged, like the island's humidity had seeped into their chests, making every small emotion heavier. Natalie stood by the sliding door, half concealed by the curtains, staring out into the dark. The porch light framed her in gold, turning the raindrops behind her into glittering strands. She looked deep in thought, her arms crossed loosely, one foot tapping a rhythm against the wooden floor. Emma watched her, unable not to. And then Natalie looked back. The moment lasted no more than a few seconds, but in it Emma felt everything: the confusion, the pull, the fear, the want. Natalie's eyes softened, then shuddered again as if she realized she had shown too much. She slipped outside into the rain. Emma waited 10 seconds before following. The air outside was warm despite the drizzle, the smell of wet hibiscus opening around them. Natalie stood by the railing, shoulders tense, hair catching streaks of water from the wind. Emma spoke softly, not wanting to spook the moment. "You okay?" "No," Natalie said, honest and immediate. She didn't turn around. Emma stepped closer, leaving a careful few inches between them. "Do you want to talk about it?" A long pause, filled only by the steady sound of rain hitting leaves. "I don't know how to do this," Natalie finally whispered. Emma's heart beat painfully. "Do what?" Natalie exhaled, the sound shaky. "Feel something that scares me this much." Another drop of rain slid down her cheek, indistinguishable from something else glistening there. She wiped it with the back of her hand quickly. "When we kissed," Natalie said, voice cracking just slightly, "it felt real. Too real. And I haven't felt that in a long time. Maybe ever." Emma's fingers tightened against the railing. "Then why pull away?" Natalie finally turned to face her. Her eyes were bright, conflicted. "Because I don't know what happens next. Because we go back home in a week. Because you live 2 states away. Because everyone in there is already watching us without even knowing what they're watching." Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the ocean in pale silver. Emma felt the truth of those fears settle in her chest, heavy, familiar. She stepped closer, not touching, but letting her presence speak gently. "Nat. I don't know the future either. I don't know what happens when we go home. But I know what I felt today wasn't a mistake." Natalie looked away, blinking hard. "I didn't say it was a mistake. But you're acting like it was." The silence stretched, trembling, full. Natalie ran a hand through her damp hair. "Do you know what scares me the most?" She didn't wait for Emma's answer. "That I want to kiss you again. Right now. And that I don't know how to stop wanting it." Emma felt something tighten, hot and sweet, in her chest. "Then don't stop," she whispered. For a moment, Natalie leaned in just enough for Emma to feel the warmth radiating off her. The rain softened, the air humming with something unbearably tender. But then Natalie froze, her gaze flicking to the doorway. Grace stood there, half hidden by the curtain, eyes wide, not with judgment, but with surprise. Evelyn appeared behind her, then quickly pulled her back inside, muttering something that sounded like, "We didn't see anything." The moment shattered. Natalie backed away, wiping her face quickly. "This is what I mean," she said, voice breaking. "Everything gets complicated. Fast." Emma reached for her hand, but Natalie took another step back, not harshly, but out of instinct. Nat. I just need time, she said softly. I need to think. Please, just give me tonight. The words cut deeper than they should, because Emma could hear the fear underneath them, fear of losing something before even claiming it. Natalie went inside first. Emma stayed on the porch, gripping the railing, feeling the rain seep into her shirt, cooling the warmth that had been growing all day. Somewhere inside, the movie played again, muffled. Someone laughed. Someone sighed. Life kept moving while her chest felt stuck in the doorway Natalie had just walked through. A few minutes later, Emma checked her phone. A message from Natalie appeared on the screen. We'll talk tomorrow. I promise. Emma typed, I'm here. Whenever you're ready. She hovered over the send button. Then deleted the message. Inside, Natalie sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her own phone screen, the typed words I shouldn't have kissed you glowing back at her. She clicked delete. Turned off the screen. And left the door slightly open, like a thought she wasn't ready to close. The house felt unusually quiet the next morning, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Sunlight eased through the windows in softened streaks, touching the floor with a gentleness Emma didn't feel yet. She sat at the dining table with a cup of coffee growing cold between her hands, trying to steady her thoughts. The ocean outside moved in slow, calm arches, a contrast to the restless tide inside her chest. Natalie hadn't come downstairs. Grace and Evelyn whispered in the kitchen, their voices low, careful, as if a single wrong note could make something fragile inside the house break. Evelyn kept glancing toward the stairs. Grace kept touching her shoulder in quiet reassurance. Whatever had sparked between them had also grown complicated overnight, but neither had the courage to address it yet. Emma understood them too well. The entire house had become a sanctuary of unfinished sentences. Eventually, Natalie appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her hair still damp from a shower, a soft blue t-shirt clinging lightly to her frame. Her eyes found Emma immediately, hesitation flickering across her expression like the shadow of a passing cloud. Without a word, she nodded toward the back door. Emma followed her outside. The morning air was warm, the smell of hibiscus drifting on a barely there breeze. They walked in silence toward the shore, their sandals brushing sand with soft whispers. Natalie stopped near a cluster of volcanic rocks where the water pooled in shallow circles. I didn't sleep, Natalie said, finally breaking the silence. Her voice trembled just enough for Emma to notice. Me neither, Emma answered. Natalie drew a slow breath, then sat on a flat rock. Emma sat across from her, their knees almost touching. The tide was low, exposing ripples in the sand that looked like fingerprints left by the ocean. I've spent my whole life trying not to need anyone too much, Natalie began. She plucked a small shell from the water, rolling it between her fingers. My parents move every 2 years. New towns, new houses, new friends you lose by default. You learn not to hold on to people, because they slip through your hands anyway. She looked up, her eyes softer than Emma had ever seen them. And then you showed up. And suddenly I wanted to stay somewhere. With someone. Emma's breath caught, her heart tightening in a way both sweet and painful. Natalie. I don't want to be someone you lose. And you don't have to stay alone to stay safe. Natalie swallowed hard, the shell trembling slightly in her hand. I'm scared. Of feeling too much. Of ruining it. Of wanting something I can't keep. Emma leaned in, her voice a whisper carried gently by the salt-tinged air. Then let me meet you halfway. Whatever you're afraid of, we can face it together. Natalie exhaled shakily, not in fear this time, but release. She lifted her hand, hovering just above Emma's, waiting. Asking without words. Emma turned her palm upward and intertwined their fingers, slowly, deliberately. For a long moment, they stayed like that, hands joined, hearts unguarded, the waves murmuring against the sand in a rhythm that felt like encouragement. "Yesterday, when you kissed me," Emma said softly, "it wasn't an accident. And it wasn't a mistake." Natalie's eyes glistened. "I know. That's why it scared me." Emma stepped forward just enough for their knees to touch. The warmth of Natalie's skin spread through her like sunrise. "But maybe the things that scare us the most," Emma whispered, "are exactly the things we're supposed to choose." Natalie let out a soft, trembling sound, half laugh, half breath, and leaned toward her. Their foreheads met gently, their noses brushing in an unintentional, tender nudge. The air warmed between them. "Can I?" Natalie whispered. "Yes," Emma murmured. Natalie kissed her. It wasn't hesitant this time. It wasn't rushed either. It was a quiet surrender, warm lips, slow movements, breaths mingling like a promise. Emma felt the world soften around them, the ocean becoming a blurred melody, the wind folding itself into their moment. Natalie's hand slid to Emma's cheek, a touch so gentle it felt like being seen from the inside out. Emma's fingers traced the line of Natalie's jaw, her touch light, reverent. They kissed once, twice, each time deeper in emotion, not urgency. When they finally parted, they stayed close, foreheads touching, breathing the same fragile air. Natalie whispered, "I think I'm choosing you. Even if it's messy. Even if it scares me." Emma felt tears press behind her eyes, warm, grateful, relieved. "Then I'm choosing you too. No matter what happens when we go home." A soft drizzle began, warm and light, settling onto their skin like a blessing. Natalie laughed quietly, letting her fingers trail along Emma's wrist, a touch that felt more intimate than any words. They walked back toward the house hand in hand, the world no longer heavy but vivid, as if colors had deepened overnight. When they reached the porch, the others looked up. Evelyn's eyebrows rose in surprise, then softened into a knowing smile. Grace nodded gently, her quiet approval radiating through the room. Later that evening, as the sun sank behind the horizon and painted the ocean in strokes of pink and gold, Emma found herself standing on the balcony again. But this time, the single sandal by the railing was joined by its pair, Natalie's feet beside hers, warm, steady, close enough that their arms brushed with every breath. The same scene as before. But her heart was no longer half of something lost. It was part of something found. Some loves don't arrive gently. They arrive like tides, pulling us toward the truth, teaching us that courage is simply choosing not to run from what feels real. Some loves ask us to stay, even when staying feels like the bravest thing we've ever done. We're so glad you made it this far. If this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to Secret Garden Stories, leaving a comment, and sharing it with friends, forums, and social media. Your support helps this channel grow and build a world with more love and less prejudice. Thank you for being here.